kitchen gun. Sparkles like new. Yeah, all clean again. Sparkles like new. I love you, kitchen gun. Just 3 shots from kitchen gun. Something like yeah, all clean again. Sparkles like new. Sparkles like new.
This kitchen is so hard to clean. If only there was an easier way.
Hi, I'm Derek Bum. Say goodbye to daily stains and dirty surfaces with new kitchen gun. New kitchen gun. Sparkles like new. Yeah, all clean again. Sparkles like new. I love you, kitchen gun. Just 3 shots from kitchen gun. Something like yeah, all clean again. Sparkles like new. This sink is filthy, but just 3 shots from kitchen gun. And it sparkles like new. Look how it cleans this greasy hob. Goodbye, dirt. Grubby tiles. I love you, kitchen gun.
This kitchen is so hard to clean. If only there was an easier way.
New kitchen gun. Sparkles like new. Yeah, all clean again. Sparkles like new. I love you, kitchen gun. Just 3 shots from kitchen gun. Something like yeah, all clean again. Sparkles like new.
This toilet is so hard to clean. There must be an easier way.
Hi, I'm Derek Bum, and I'm declaring war on toilets with new toilet grenade. Just pull the pin, pop it in the bowl, put the lid down, and let toilet grenade do the rest. Toilet grenade, bang! New toilet grenade. Sparkles like new. Yeah, all clean again. Sparkles like new. I love you, toilet grenade. Just 3 shots from toilet grenade. Something like yeah, all clean again. Sparkles like new. New kitchen gun. Sparkles like new. Yeah, all clean again. Sparkles like new. I love you, kitchen gun. Just 3 shots from kitchen gun. Something like yeah, all clean again. Sparkles like new. Sparkles like new.
This kitchen is so hard to clean. If only there was an easier way.
Hi, I'm Derek Bum. Say goodbye to daily stains and dirty surfaces with new kitchen gun. New kitchen gun. Sparkles like new. Yeah, all clean again. Sparkles like new. I love you, kitchen gun. Just 3 shots from kitchen gun. Something like yeah, all clean again. Sparkles like new. This sink is filthy, but just 3 shots from kitchen gun. And it sparkles like new. Look how it cleans this greasy hob. Goodbye, dirt. Grubby tiles. I love you, kitchen gun.
This kitchen is so hard to clean. If only there was an easier way.
New kitchen kitchen gun. Sparkles like new. Yeah, all clean again. Sparkles like new. I love you, kitchen gun. Just 3 shots from kitchen gun. Something like yeah, all clean again. Sparkles like new.
This toilet is so hard to clean. There must be an easier way.
Hi, I'm Derek Bum, and I'm declaring war on toilets with new Toilet Grenade. Just pull the pin, pop it in the bowl, put the lid down, and that Toilet Grenade do the rest. Toilet Grenade, bang! New Toilet Grenade. Sparkles like new. Yeah, all clean again. Sparkles like new. I love you, Toilet Grenade. Just 3 shots from Toilet Grenade. Something like yeah, all clean again. Sparkles like new. New kitchen gun. Sparkles like new. Yeah, all clean again. Sparkles like new. I love you, kitchen gun. Just 3 shots from kitchen gun. Something like yeah, all clean again. Sparkles like new. Sparkles like new.
This kitchen is so hard to clean. If only there was an easier way.
Hi, I'm Derek Bum. Say goodbye to daily stains and dirty surfaces with new kitchen gun. New kitchen gun. Sparkles like new. Yeah, all clean again. Sparkles like new. I love you, kitchen gun. Just 3 shots from kitchen gun. Something like yeah, all clean again. Sparkles like new. This sink is filthy, but just 3 shots from kitchen gun. And it sparkles like new. Look how it cleans this greasy hob. Goodbye, dirt. Grubby tiles. I love you, kitchen gun.
This kitchen is so hard to clean. If only there was an easier way.
New kitchen gun. Sparkles like new. Yeah, all clean again. Sparkles like new. I love you, kitchen gun. Just 3 shots from kitchen gun. Something like yeah, all clean again. Sparkles like new.
This toilet is so hard to clean. There must be an easier way.
Hi, I'm Derek Bum, and I'm declaring war on toilets with new Toilet Grenade. Just pull the pin, pop it in the bowl, put the lid down, and that Toilet Grenade do the rest. Toilet Grenade, bang! New Toilet Grenade. Sparkles like new. Yeah, all clean again. Sparkles like new. I love you, Toilet Grenade. Just 3 shots from Toilet Grenade. Something like
Quirky Only Fanfics, the series. Part 1, Ian, Alex, Oscar, Rab, Finley. The sun was shining brightly as Oscar was outside, in his jacuzzi with... You know what? Never mind. I'll stop right here. We're not reading. We're not continuing this.
Aside from their tiger cloning efforts, the latest Haramal biofuel powered craft looks to be a market. rapid improvement upon its shows the resilience of a team. Eventually, AG Systems fell victim to their own inconsistency. Their lack of success for many years led the company to declare bankruptcy, and the team which personified the sport itself was no more. What was left of the team was subsequently bought up by G-Tech Systems in 2155 to compete in the F9000 League. While this did keep the company competing, it was at the expense of everything they stood for. G-Tech were money obsessed, openly admitting that they intended to buy success in the league regardless of how much it would cost them. This, coupled with the death of Pierre Belmondo, was the final straw for many old AG Systems fans who soon turned their back on G-Tech, convinced that the soul of AG racing had finally perished. G-Tech's arrogance, though, would eventually be their undoing. The collapse of the league revealed colossal financial irregularities in G-Tech's accounts, suggesting that they were effectively being funded solely through backhanders from the corrupt Overtel Corporation. When this emerged, they had absolutely no defence. G-Tech was shut down on the spot. From the ashes of G-Tech, the phoenix of a new AG Systems arose. In 2171, the team were reformed, going back to the philosophy of their founder and their roots in AG racing. Due to their long absence, their reintroduction to the league was a shaky one, especially competing with those long-standing teams that survived the fall of the F9000. However, over the years they grew in confidence, and later went on to win the 2206 season following the disqualification of Triakis. A series of strong performances in the FX350 class events, coupled with confidence-inspiring pre-season testing for the FX400 League, showed that their 2206 FX300 championship title was no fluke. Their strong position in the FX400 League shows the resilience of a team who deserved to be at the forefront of the sport, and considering their founder was the man responsible for the existence of AG technology in the first place, there are few who could argue. Oricom Research Industries. The founding of Oricom was a direct result of the forced resignation of two prominent AG Systems employees. Following a heated exchange with Holst McQueen over the proposed future path of AG Systems, Delia Flaubert left the company and founded US-based Oricom within a year. Flaubert shared Pierre Belmondo's vision of a technological advancement for the benefit of all rather than for profit, and as such, Oricom is dedicated to maintaining Belmondo's philosophy. This was her side of the argument while she was still locking horns with McQueen, and as such, Belmondo sympathised with her. However, as the situation had become so volatile, Belmondo had no choice but to dismiss both. As a result of this, Oricom and Kyrex have always held a fierce rivalry. This was also seen between both sets of pilots for much of the early years of the league, the most notable of which was during the F3600. There were constant rumours that second pilot Anastasia Cherevosky was a spy for Kyrex, and the Tetsuo twins made no secret of their personal vendetta with each other. This even spilled out of the racing environment when Kyrex launched a smear campaign against Oricom's lead pilot Ariel Tetsuo following her increase in popularity among young fans. During the transition into the F9000, Oricom saw themselves as the sole remaining guardians of Belmondo's vision following the collapse of AG Systems. However, their stance on the spirit of AG racing was starting to become somewhat of an irritant to a number of other teams. Tigron naturally opposed them after taking control of Kyrex, but other newer teams such as Zyos also openly mocked them. This reached a peak when Zyos were able to poach Natasha Belmondo from Oricom, claiming that when one of Pierre Belmondo's own descendants ends up deserting them, they're clutching at straws. The constant barrage of criticism led Oricom to develop a significantly heavier craft, intending to tear apart anyone who dared stray from the Belmondo ideals. Tigron will be the ones to feel this pent-up anger the most, with races frequently being dominated by heated battles which often ended up in eliminations. It was said that the cost of replacing destroyed craft from these two teams over the course of only a few seasons ran into the billions. The collapse of the F9000 was almost a relief for Oricom, as to them it signalled the end of the betrayal of Belmondo's vision. They returned to commercial AG development until the dawn of the FX300 League, where they felt duty bound to return. This was further fuelled by the re-emergence of Kyrex under new ownership. However, their long absence from the racing circuit had begun to take its toll. The new ships struggled to compete with their rivals' new efforts, and some of the newer teams such as Triakis were gaining a significant foothold. As a result, they withdrew from the early seasons of the FX350 and 400 events to refine their craft. Naturally, this drew accusations from all corners that Oricom could no longer handle the competition. The smiles were soon wiped off their rivals' faces when they returned, with the new Fury class craft proving that it could more than match anything else on the track. Like Physar, Oricom have been a near permanent fixture on the AG racing circuit, and whatever anyone thinks of their motivations for competing, or their sometimes evangelical approach to protecting Belmondo's vision, they are nonetheless an iconic team. Kyrex Research and Development. Where Oricom were born on the principle of maintaining Belmondo's philosophy, Kyrex were born on profit-led principles. Founder Holst McQueen was originally a member of Pierre Belmondo's research team at AG Systems, and witnessed first-hand the commercial demand for AG technology. As interest from the private companies grew, McQueen scorned Belmondo's naivety in ignoring the profitability of the technology, and ended up clashing viciously with his fellow researcher Delia Flaubert. This exchange ended up costing him his job at AG Systems. McQueen travelled to Russia and outlined plans to Kyrex Industries for a racing team so that Flaubert's new Oricom team would not remain unchallenged. Kyrex was just a single cog in the machine that was the Overtel Corporation. Their only concern was the maximisation of audiences at any cost necessary. As a result, Kyrex enjoyed almost limitless funding, and with McQueen as the team's managing director, Kyrex went on to become the most successful team in AG racing history. Their lead pilot, Kel Solar, to this day is widely regarded to be the greatest AG pilot of all time, and the bitter rivalry between Ariane Tetsuo and her twin sister Ariel, the lead pilot for Oricom, made for some incredibly heated encounters. Kyrex's craft traditionally were very heavy and required a lot of skill to pilot. As a result, very few pilots came through Kyrex's own ranks. The majority were poached from other teams on the promise of money and success. Rebranding themselves as Kyrex Research and Development, they cemented their dominance all the way up to the end of the F7200 era. At the dawn of the F9000, Overtel finally managed to gain control over the race commission. In doing so, Kyrex were unceremoniously absorbed into Tigron Enterprises in 2149. Where Kyrex were considered to be aggressive in their methods, Tigron were morally bankrupt. They immediately set out to cause as much damage as they could to the opposition, and targeted Oricom as a matter of principle. An intercepted memorandum from the company claimed that they would buy lead pilot Omar Kumala his own diamond farm if he put Oricom out of business for good. During the takeover, Tigron managed to uncover all manner of illegal activities that Overtel had engaged in while they were in control of Kyrex. As a result, they had all the information they needed to blackmail Overtel into allowing them to actively flaunt the rules. This went as far as fixing races in the later years, but as a result, they ended up signing their own death warrant. An official investigation into Overtel's activities put everything into the public, including all of Tigron's machinations. The last F9000 race was stopped halfway through, and Overtel's administrators took the easy way out. Tigron were finished, and the old Kyrex production facilities lay derelict. In 2179, a young Russian businessman named Felix Levovich bought up the production facility and resurrected Kyrex. His father was heavily involved with the company before the takeover by Tigron, and he immediately set out to restore the old team to its former glory. However, the new craft had to be a markedly different beast to the old models, as the enormous funding enjoyed by Kyrex in the past was no longer available. His new craft was a much more balanced machine, more accessible to pilots of all abilities. As a result, they were able to gain a foothold in the new FX300 League and work their way up from there. One final Tigron craft remained from the old facilities, which was also used in a bid to condition their pilots to heavier ships, but it was scrapped once it had served its purpose. Levovich wanted no remnants of Tigron to remain. Fortunes have changed for Kyrex when the FX350 and 400 events came about. They've acquired a large number of sponsors since their reformation, and are on course to reclaim their position at the front of the pack. And as long as Oricom are still racing, Kyrex will always be there to bring them down. The rivalry between Flaubert and McQueen still lives on to this day. Piranha advancements. Piranha were formed as a result of the amalgamation of two smaller Brazilian teams, Pia and Hana, in 2040. Their initial foray into AG racing in the inaugural championships in 2048 showed a lot of promise for one of the younger teams competing, but they mysteriously disappeared from the circuit when the F3600 League began. The company relocated to China, providing air brake technology to AG Systems and Oricom for use in their F3600 craft. However, this was all a front for their true activities. The company re-emerged in 2060 and development began on what they described as the perfect AG racer. This monstrous craft emerged in the F5000 to the astonishment of the other teams. It carried no weapon technology, but it was by far the fastest and most agile craft the league had ever seen. However, the cost to build these craft was astronomical, and finding pilots that were talented enough to fly them was incredibly difficult when trying to compete with Kyrex's financial muscle. When the F7200 League came about, Piranha relocated to their native Brazil and developed a more sedate craft. The methods that went into the development were kept a close secret. No press conferences were ever given, and any communication that was released by the team tended to be particularly ambiguous. But there was this constant theme of perfection behind all of Piranha's motivations. The F9000 saw Piranha take this idea to the extreme. The rise of Aries Piermont to the chair of the company, along with the acquisition of Assegai Developments, allowed them to produce some of their finest work. Their craft were immensely fast, and with the stabilisation technology acquired from Assegai, they were very agile as well. But despite a phenomenal win percentage and consistent high-placed finishes, Piermont was not happy. He claimed that only through reaching true perfection would he ever allow himself the luxury of a smile. This approach took a major financial toll on the company, and when the F9000 league collapsed and AG Racing ground to a halt, Piranha were left with no outlet for their research. A number of years of uncertainty followed. The company were forced to sell Assegai back to the United African Nations, and eventually were taken over by the Brazilian government. But the re-emergence of AG Racing gave new life to the team. Without the financial backing they enjoyed as a private company, they were unable to exploit the ideas of perfection they previously held dear. However, they still had a reputation to keep as being the fastest team on the circuit, a reputation that needed defending now that Icarus had a claim to that title. They entered the FX300 with an uncharacteristically heavy craft not seen since their early days in the AGRC, but with an undisputed top-end speed that even Icarus had to play second fiddle to. They continued into the FX400 League with a similar craft, and with a new Fury class craft currently doing the rounds in the FX350 League, Piranha are doing all they can to ensure that they will dominate the circuit once again. Assegai Developments. Assegai were formed in 2113 following an invite from the AG League to the United African Nations just prior to the inauguration of the F7200. It was an attempt to give the AG circuit truly international representation, and the success of African pilots already racing for the current lineup suggested that this would be an important development. Taking their name from an African long spear, Assegai chose to recruit only pilots from the African nations, and as such were instrumental in greatly enhancing the sport's international development. They entered the F7200 with possibly the most agile craft ever seen in AG racing, able to navigate technical circuits with a finesse that even Faisal struggled to match. Such a technological achievement from a relative newcomer to the league caught the eyes of the larger, more established teams. Most notable of them were Piranha, who bought out Assegai prior to the start of the F9000 in 2150. When Assegai was sold back to the United African Nations following Piranha's decline in 2181, they experimented with a number of different from their pilots at the time, the Shields. Unfortunately, they were forced to compromise on the handling that they were so well known for, and the craft ended up a mid-pack runner. This changed in the FX400. Assegai wanted to return to their